Hi, my name is Alicia Coronado, and I am here to talk to you about teaching ESL. Um, I have a couple questions that were posed to me, and I'm going to try to answer some of them. One is, how do I deal with stress? It's a really interesting question because if it's a stress related to working with ESL students, I think that being really well prepared just eliminates the stress level. Uh, Being prepared for class beforehand, writing your lesson plans a week or 2 weeks in advance really helps. Other than that, I don't think there's really a stressful moment if you just accept the fact that students are individuals and they learn at their own pace. Um, there's really not a lot of stress in that acceptance of students' needs. Um, the next question that was posed to me is, how do I deal with students? Um, I didn't quite understand the question, mainly because of the word deal with students. I find that to be a really negative, it comes with a negative connotation. How do you deal with problems, or how do you deal with issues? How did you deal with the situation? And I don't want to connect that word with working with students. I'd rather say, how do we work with students? And that I can answer. How do I work with students is that I identify their strengths and weaknesses, and we do this together. Um, I think that looking at their strengths is really builds student confidence. A lot of students don't come with a blank uh, book. They're not a blank book. They come with all these experiences. They come with all this information. And so I think that if we tap into individual student strengths, that's really helpful. And then it helps us identify the weaknesses that each student might have. Maybe it's grammatical, maybe it's pronunciation, but we start to identify these weaknesses. And again, this is something that we do together with the student. Another way that I work with students is that I try not to confine language acquisition to textbook um, and rote repetition. Um, I really try to work with students to be a little creative in finding opportunities to use the language that you're using in class. Um, I think that a really important way of working with students is finding out what their interests are, what their self-interests are, and what their needs are. And that way, it gives us the opportunity to be more creative as teachers and bringing things that are interesting to them. And then language becomes more real, something more tangible. Um, Another question that was asked of me is, what methods do I use to teach English as a second language? I think that in general, not just teaching English as a second language, but other opportunities for teaching have really led me to be a very student-centered, having a student-centered classroom. And what that means is that I really listen to where the students are at. I've mainly worked with students who are in high school, and at the moment I'm working with students in college, and I've taught ESL to adults for quite a long time. And I think it's really important to tap into what their needs are. That comes from a school of a pedagogy of Paulo Freire, and really starting off where they are. Um, I think I tend to be very student-centered, really reflective of their needs, their interests, um, and more than anything, use what students already know as a basis of information. Um, Another thing that I do, I think that I really like to ask questions, not necessarily give answers. I guess people would call that the Socratic method of teaching, and that is constantly questioning and questioning and questioning. And the answers, there are no right or wrong answers to say, per se. In terms of language acquisition, it's just an opportunity for students to use the language orally among themselves. Um, some tips of how we can help students when they're learning a new language. I guess as an instructor, I would really say be patient. Mm, I think it's really important for us to remember when we were learning something completely foreign and new to us. And this is where these students are. They're acquiring a language very foreign to their own, and so we need to be really patient with them. Um, I think that maybe, again, I'm being a little repetitive, but um, using what students already know as a jumping board is really important. I think it sets the tone as to you students would feel more confident if they already know that they know something. So I think that's really important, using their strengths and what they already know. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I don't know how the school districts feel about this, and various cities feel differently about things, but let's get involved with the students outside of the classroom. Get to know who they are. I think that mainly that's important in that you'll tap into what are their interests and what are their needs. Um, and that way it allows you to be a little bit more creative in your class material, and finding different opportunities to use the language. Um, I think really getting to know the community where your student lives is important so that you can tap into opportunities outside of the classroom where students can practice the language. And so that there's always constantly something for them to do outside of the classroom so that they can practice whatever it is that they learn during the week. So I think it takes a little bit more work, a little bit more creativity than, let's say, let's turn to page 47 and go through the lesson. Certainly that part of the language acquisition is important, and that's something you'll probably learn in school. But in ESL, finding the opportunities outside of the classroom is really important. As an example, for example, I had a group of students who were predominantly women at one point, and this is in another city. These women were taking classes in the daytime while their kids were in school, and um, really listened to what was going on with them, and they were stay-at-home moms, and they were very family oriented, and their time was golden. That hour and 15 minutes that were in my class, they were always very punctual, and they had to leave on time because they had to go to the grocery store, they had to pick up their kids, they had so many things to do. And so I incorporated those things into the classroom. So definitely we learned vocabulary going to the grocery store and learning all the fruits and vegetables, and learning how to read labels. Um, and so that was an entire 2 week, 3 week lesson. Um, I also realized that they used a lot of the services in the city. And so getting to know what they needed, I learned that they needed to obtain transportation for their kids to and from an after school program. And so teaching them how to read a map was something that came to the table. Um, there was a group of, I remember there was a group of young folks in another class, and they were more interested in finding work. And so, absolutely, the writing or the material that we used was how to fill out applications. And so, what's the language that's used in filling out an application? It was all about interview skills. And so, the class is not the same every semester. And that's pretty much working with adults. Working with kids is totally different. It's actually more creative and fun. And so figure out what it is that they're interested in, use role playing and acting, and in terms of vocabulary, find out what they're interested in. I'm sure they'll want to learn as many words as they can in order to communicate with those new circles of people that they're meeting. So those are my final thoughts. I hope this is helpful, and I wish you lots of luck. And I hope that you enjoy teaching ESL as much as I do. Thank you.